Hey folks, hope you all are doing well. I am Karan Bandal from Econosite, and in this video we'll look at the two eyes of Asia that are set to shine as global economic leaders. These two eyes are India and Indonesia. Not long back, that is in 2013, these two countries were notoriously named among the so-called fragile five emerging market economies that depend heavily on foreign investment to finance growth. A decade later, their fortunes have flipped. The two Asian nations are now seen as rising secular stars amid a challenging global economic outlook. Especially because for the ongoing fiscal year, when the global economy is projected to grow at a mere 2.7%, these two nations should grow at twice that pace at least. Over the secular horizon, it is expected that the annual real GDP growth for India will be between 6 and 7%, and that for Indonesia will be between 5 and 6%. Both countries, with a combined population of almost 1.7 billion, benefit from younger demographics, in contrast to rapidly aging populations in China and developed countries. And despite uncertain external conditions like volatile energy prices, supply chain breakages, strong US dollar, geopolitical tensions, etc., the two countries have effectively managed inflation and fiscal financing. So let's look at the four key themes driving growth in these two countries. Number one, demographics. Roughly speaking, demographics is the study of a population based on factors such as age, race, and sex. The size and age of the workforce play a vital role in the economic growth of a nation. In that context, the younger the population, the better, because young people consume a wide range of goods and services as opposed to middle-aged and elderly. The young tend to spend money on buying a house, appliances, furniture, automobile, education for their children, consumer electronics, and the list keeps going, which generates a massive demand in the economy. Now, both these countries have a young and growing labor force, with 68% of both populations currently aged between 15 and 64 years old, only 7% above 65. The old age dependency ratio here is much better than what it is in the case of the other developed countries. The good part of the story is that these populations will remain young for quite a long time in the future. The median population age is projected to remain under 40 until 2070 for Indonesia and 2057 for India, in contrast to 2027 for China. This translates to a sustained competitive advantage not only in terms of workforce but also an opportunity to unleash consumption, saving, and investment. India alone will have over 1 billion working age persons by 2030. The country has about 20 odd years more to capitalize on its demographic dividend, which also means India's economic policy makers cannot afford to miss their mark. Number two, infrastructure. India has set a vision of getting to a $40 trillion economy by 2047, and infrastructure forms a crucial piece of this dream. India's budget for the fiscal year 2023-24 has allocated a massive $122 billion to infrastructure development, 5 times the amount spent in the previous 9 years. This capital expenditure brings in with it the multiplier effect in the economy, where every rupee spent on infrastructure results in around 3 rupees gain in the GDP. Indonesia has also focused on infrastructure since Joko Widodo came to power in 2014. For the nation of that size, the progress they have made since 2014 in building roads, airports, seaports, dams, and so on is quite impressive. Number three, reforms. The current ruling dispensation in India has been moderately successful in rolling out sustained structural reforms since 2014. Initiatives like Make in India and sector-specific production-linked incentives have helped foster innovation and led to an increase in foreign direct investment in the key sectors. The effective coordination between India's central bank and the government has resulted in a significant improvement in India's macro stability since 2013, which resulted in a reduced currency volatility and a doubling of foreign exchange reserves to over $600 billion. The most consequential turnaround, however, has taken place in India's banking sector. Banks' non-performing assets ratio is at the lowest in a decade, their profitability has improved, and corporate balance sheets have deleveraged. All this will surely help provide efficient credit, contributing to higher growth in the coming years through an increase in investments and consumption. In case of Indonesia, their central bank also rolled out a prudent policy mix. The bank promoted greater use of currencies other than the US dollar in trade and investment. Regulatory and tax changes resulted in higher local investor ownership of government bonds, which helped curb currency volatility. Meanwhile, government reforms of reducing the red tape helped improve foreign direct investment into the country, and the global commodity boom provided further tailwind to the resource-rich country's economic resilience through the strength of its exports. And number 4, shifting global value chains. India excels in the services exports. The sector has seen a 14% compound annual growth over the last 2 decades, with IT and business process outsourcing dominating the offerings. India has also become a prominent hub for the GCCs, that is, Global Capability Centers. Of all the GCCs in the world outside of the home country, 45% are now in India alone. India will continue the dominance in this space with a large talent pool and wages about 8 to 10 times lower than developed markets. On top of that, India's manufacturing push along with its strong US ties make India a top destination for firms' China Plus One strategy. A sign of early success is clear. India assembled a record $7 billion worth of iPhones last fiscal, accounting for 7% of global iPhone production versus just 1% in 2021. Also, India's existing sectoral advantages in automotives, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, etc. should propel its manufacturing as a share of gross value addition from 16% currently to 21% of the GDP over the next 10 years. Indonesia, on the other hand, is capitalizing on the supply chain of its natural resources. The country is building downstream processing capabilities. Home to 22% of the world's nickel reserves, Indonesia banned exports of unprocessed metal in 2020. Then, foreign investment began flowing into local processing plants and smelters. As a result, the export of processed nickel soared from $1 billion in 2015 to $30 billion in 2022. This country is therefore moving up the value chain and is looking to replicate the success with other metals like bauxite, tin, and copper. Tourism is another key focus area for Indonesia, with the nation's 5 New Balis plan, which seeks to invest in and promote 5 super priority Indonesian tourist destinations to boost the country's tourism receipts, which stood at just 1.6% of the GDP in 2019. It is worth mentioning 2 other factors supporting prospects of long-term growth in both the countries. First, global transition towards green energy sources will help Indonesia since it is resource-rich in green commodities used in batteries and grids, whereas India's aggressive energy transformation agenda focused on solar energy and green hydrogen will drive growth there. And second, digitalization. In 2021, there were 48.6 billion real-time payments in India compared to 18.5 billion in China. Digital economy in both the nations is growing rapidly, enabling the growth of MSMEs by providing access to formal credit, also resulting in employment generation in the process of doing so. So for both these nations, there are more opportunities than obstacles right now, and they must make the most of it. I hope you found this analysis interesting. I'll speak with you again next week. Until then, take care.